Hi, my name is George Coles, and I am an avid retro video game collector.
Do a barrel roll!
I have decided to document my journeys as I grow my collection. Please join me as I share with you my finds. Welcome to Retro Game Treasure Hunting. Hi everybody, as the opener said, my name is George Coles, and this is Retro Game Treasure Hunting. On this episode, it's going to be the first of a four-parter. Basically, my local store, my favorite store in the whole world, my local retro game store, Flash Games, Collectibles, Flash Games, Comics, and Collectibles here in Sebring, Florida. Awesome store, by the way. Check them out on Facebook. I'm going to put the link down here. The people working there are amazing. John and Dario, both really cool dudes, both really awesome, really helpful. They had a 2-year anniversary sale. A lot of their stuff was significantly marked down, so I knocked off a couple $100 out of my credit that I had, which if you watched my previous show, I traded in a game and got some credit. So with that being said, I picked up 16 things, 15 games, and 1 system. So I'm going to break it up into 4 episodes, basically 4 apiece. 3 episodes are going to have 4 games each. This episode is going to have 3 games and a system. So with all that out of the way, let's go right into our first pickup. And the first on this series, not the first cartridge game, because the first cartridge game was a Genesis game, but the first Nintendo 64 game on the series, Doom 64. Now, you may be familiar with this game, you may be familiar with the franchise. Doom is a really fun franchise, but was one of my favorites as a teenager. It's one of the franchises I had to buy everything that came out for. It was so cool, so atmospheric. The way it was set up, it was so different than anything else. It's just a fun game. Nothing tremendously crazy. You knew what you got into. You knew what it was. It was over the top. It was just fun. By the time this game actually came out, though, there was a little bit of a burnout from the Doom games in about a 5-6 year period, or 7 year. By the time this came out, basically, there were ports and remakes and redos and tons of Doom games, so they already kind of burn out the marketplace. However, in my opinion, this is the best of the original set of Doom games. Not the reboots are awesome, the reboot games, but I kind of consider it something totally different, because this is a total different style than the new reboot series. So of the original series of games, I think this is the best representation. This and the Sega 32X version are my 2 favorite Doom games of all time. It still holds up decently, in my opinion. It's, obviously looking back at it with 2018 eyes, it's not a graphical wonder. However, for the time, it really was. And the 3D, all of that was amazing. With that being said, let's go into our ratings for the game. Now, we're going to rate everything. If you haven't seen any of my videos before, I rate everything on a 1 to 5 scale. 1 being a worst, 5 being the best. Graphic-wise, I'm going to give this a 3. It is still Doom, and it still made a lot of advancements, but by this time, there was stuff on the Nintendo 64 that was blowing away this graphic presentation. It's not the worst graphic-wise game on the Nintendo 64, but it's not the best either. Gameplay-wise, I give it a 3. Again, the gameplay mechanics are good. There's a line of demarcation in this type of game where Halo's basically, the original Halo game is a line of demarcation to me. Anything pre-Halo it's like they were experimenting with what controllers are going to work well. Anything post Halo kind of copied Halo. So the gameplay is fun. It feels good. It feels natural. I'm going to give it a 3. It's better than a lot of the gameplay of the games at the time. Now, difficulty-wise, and I want to stress this because a couple people have asked me why I rate what my difficulty rating actually means. And by this, it's kind of a several factor thing. Difficulty doesn't necessarily mean how hard the game is. It means how hard in ratio to the difficulty related to the ratio of fun with the game. So in other words, a game like, say, Bloodborne, which is extremely difficult, however also really fun to get into, is going to have a high rating, because to me, I like that sense of difficulty. I like that sense of achievement, which hopefully that clears it up for some people that have asked me. Difficulty on this game, I give it a 4. I think there's a bit of a learning curve, not too much. There is what I call the overwhelming horde problem at some points in the game. It's something that you find in these shooters where you get to certain levels, and it's not necessarily you're fighting hard enemies, you're fighting waves and waves and waves of enemies, and it's kind of they knock you down and knock you down and knock you down to where it's the point where so many of them have come that it's knocked you, killed you, basically. Replay value, I give it a 4. I still think this is a fun game to pick up and play. I played a little bit of it to capture it for this video, and I kind of didn't want to put it down. I kind of wanted to keep going through. However, as I said, I had 16 or 15 games to review, so I had to move on. But I'm definitely going to go back because I had a ton of fun. Replay, I give it a 4. Music, the ambient music in this game is amazing. It fits the tone of the game. I give that a 4 as well. Overall, I think this game's a 4 out of 5. A really good game. Still can be gotten pretty relatively cheaply. I don't remember exactly how much I paid because, like I said, I got a whole bunch of them and I already took the stickers off so I could clean them a bit. But not that they were dirty when I bought them, just clean the goo off. You know, you get a little bit. Anyway, the pricing stickers. I'm not a fan of keeping the pricing stickers on unless taking it off is going to damage either the sticker or the box. So I usually take them off. But that's a different story. But overall, I give it a 4. I think it's a really good game. If you're a fan of this style, if you're a fan of Nintendo 64, I think I would put this in a probably should own category of Nintendo 64 games. And if you're a fan of Doom, it's a must own. This, and like I said, the 32X version are the 2 definitive Doom games, in my opinion. Now next up, another first. Now this is going to be a video of first because everything I have here, it's the first game I've shown on these videos for that specific system. And one of them in the system we're going to talk about in a minute, are firsts for me personally. This one is Burger Time for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Now, I know a lot of you are familiar with this game. A lot of you know it as an Atari game or ColecoVision game. It is an older game that ended up getting ported to the Nintendo NES system. To me, this is the most true to the arcade version as there is. I think this is the closest to what the arcade Burger Time was, and it is an arcade port. Actually, I think it's spot on for the game system that was on the arcade. There are some issues with it being a port and it being a game that's a couple of years old by the time this came out. I believe the original, without doing the research, I believe the original Burger Time came out about 82, 83. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. And this came out a couple of years later. 85, I believe, is when this one was really 85 or 86. I'm not sure. Again, I didn't really look that part off. I'm kind of going off the top of my head with that. But anyway, By this time, the game had already been out for a few years, so it was a little bit dated. A little bit of its luster was lost. But to me, if you're going to own the home version of Burger Time, again, like I said with Doom, this is the definitive copy. There have been several ports of it, but this, to me, is the best looking one and the best, most true to the arcade that you could get on this. A lot of the reasons I love this game, it's one of my all-time favorite games. I've spent tons and tons and tons of times on this very simple, really quirky game. It's hard to explain. You walk through levels and you're basically creating hamburgers. How, as silly as that sounds, it's extremely addictive and extremely fun. This is a game that when I was a kid, my mother and I, my Nintendo Entertainment System, and believe it or not, folks, for those of you that aren't as old as I am, homes when I was a kid didn't always have multiple televisions. Not every room had a television. Most people had one TV, maybe two TVs in their house. And the second TV, more often than not, would be in the parents' bedroom. Well, we had a living room TV and we had a TV in my mom and stepdad's bedroom. My Nintendo was put into my mom's room. The reason for this is because, the family would be downstairs watching television. If I wanted to play video games, I stayed out of everybody's way. I was playing it in my mom's room. Well, my mother became a gamer too. She started liking video games. She started playing with me. She started earlier with the Atari and the ColecoVision, but by the time this came around, she was full on in it. So me and my mom would trade off playing this game, and we'd have hours and hours of fun. It's one of the games that she actually had a lot of success in. She wasn't really that good at video games, but she loved playing them. But Burger Time was one of the ones that she was really good at, and owning this game brings a lot of that memories back for me, which is awesome, Ty, because, who doesn't love having memories of their childhood playing video games with your mother? That being said, let's go right into our ratings. Graphic-wise, I'm going to give it a 2. The graphics are okay. Like I said, it's as good of an arcade port as there is of Burger Time. It's not the best graphic-wise on the system. The Nintendo has a lot of games that blow this away graphically, so therefore it takes a little bit of hit on that. Gameplay, I give it a 3. A little bit of a learning curve, a little bit of difficulty. It's one of the games that if you play through over and over again, you're going to pick up exactly what you need to do to get past each individual level, and that's one of the things that holds it back a bit from being a better grade here, is there's really only 6 levels that keep repeating themselves. It's meant to be an arcade game. It's meant to be an early 80s arcade game, so I can't hold that against it, but I also can hold it against it because of the time it did come out. Difficulty, I give it a 2. Not very difficult at all. Not very challenging. It's a mindless fun game. You're not going to get into this game looking for something that's going to challenge you intellectually, challenge your skills in gaming, but you're going to look into this to have fun. Replay value, I give it a 4. This might be just a me personal rating, but I am always going to go back to this game. I'm always going to play this game whether it comes out, whether I play it on a system that's, like NES Classic type thing, or as part of a compilation, or as this version here. I'm going to go back to this game over and over again, probably for the rest of my life. It's one of those games that has such a tie to my childhood that even just looking at the sticker gives me a smile on my face and gives me such great memories. Musically, it's NES. It's good. I give it a 3. There's much better musical scores on the NES. It fits perfectly with this. It fits with the arcade score. Again, a lot of these, unfortunately, I got to mark down less in my personal enjoyment of it because of what else is on the system. Overall, Actually, overall, give it a better rating than the combination of these scores, and it'll make sense here. Overall, I give it a 4, mainly because of the replay value, mainly because of the sense of nostalgia tied to this game. Again, like I said, it is one of my all-time favorite games. A lot of people, it isn't on their all-time favorite lists. If you got into this afterwards, you're not going to go back and play a game like this and go find it as a hidden gem, really. It's going to be a weird, quirky game that you're like, really? People played this weirdness? But I did, and I loved it, and I had hours and hours. I couldn't tell you how many countless hours I've had playing this game. It's probably up there with Centipede. Is another game that I've had hours and hours with. The Legend of Zelda. Games of this era that you just played and played and played and played through, and it's actually helped me out a lot because it was one of the games that my mom really bought in on, so she was willing to buy more games, if you know what I mean. She would buy me more games because she had fun with this game. But that being said, we're going to move on to our third game, which is not only a first for this series, but is a very first for me. This is the very first PlayStation Portable PSP game I've ever owned. I never owned a PSP when it came out. I hadn't owned it, and the honest answer is, when PSP came out, I had a job and I was working, and I really didn't own a portable system because there was I didn't really see a usefulness for it. I go back now, I see a lot of reviews on it, especially the way that Metal Jesus talks, and I thought, maybe I should dive into this. And with there being a sale, this was something I wanted to dive right into. Now, this pickup I got specifically because it's a port, and it's Final Fantasy Tactics: The War of the Lions. It's a port of Final Fantasy Tactics for PlayStation 1. However, it's not just a true port of that game. It is very representative of it visually. There are added scenes, there's added cinematographics, there's added dialogue. They've added where the classes, there's more classes to this, more people could do more things. Personally, this was one of my favorite PlayStation 1 games. Other than the capture I did for this video, I haven't played this copy much. I played maybe 30 minutes of it. But I think I see where this one's just going to be just like that. It's going to end up being one of my favorite games of the PSP. And obviously right now it's my absolute favorite game of the PSP because it's the only one that I have experience with. A lot of people, the Final Fantasy Tactics was either a love or hate relationship. You either loved it because of the differences it had from the original or from the main Final Fantasy series. Some people hated the tactics aspect of it. They didn't like that way of playing an RPG. It kind of plays, the best way I can explain it to someone that doesn't know is it plays like chess. You have to think strategically. You have to place your players on a board, basically, in certain spots, and they can only attack from certain areas. They can only use magic from certain areas. They can defend from certain areas. So there was that added layer of it to the difficulty other than just the turn-based fighting, which we were familiar with in the Final Fantasy series. So a lot of people jumped off because of that. To me, I thought it added to it. I enjoyed it. It's one of my favorite of the entire Final Fantasy series, Final Fantasy Tactics, that is. This and Crystal Chronicles, which I reviewed on a previous show, are probably my two favorites. These two and Final Fantasy VIII and the actual Final Fantasy IV probably are my favorites of all the series. But it's an amazing series. I love all the Final Fantasy games. They're so much fun to play. Coming off of that, we're going to give this our ratings. Graphic-wise, I give it a 4. It's a very true port of the PSP version, or I'm sorry, of the PlayStation 1 version. It's very much on par with that graphically. It's a really good game. I really enjoy it. I love the look of these games. Gameplay value, I give it a 5. I think it's amazing. Like I said, there are some people that don't like these, and there's some people that love them. I'm in the love them category. And I understand if you're in the hate them category, but unfortunately that's not me. If I was, I wouldn't have picked this up. Difficulty, I give it a 5. It is that nice blend of, it's difficult enough to give you a challenge, but not too difficult where you're going to throw your controller at the screen, or in this case, throw your entire system. Replay value, I give it a 5. Again, it's one of these games that you could come back to almost annually and play, that you could come back on a yearly basis and play Final Fantasy Tactics and still be fun and still have a lot of joy out of it. Music-wise, I give it a 5 out of 5. The Final Fantasy series, hands down, is one of the top 3 to 5 series of games music-wise. In other words, their ambient music for the entire series is fantastic. The only others I can think of that are on that level are the Castlevania series, the Zelda series, of course the Mario games, but that's a little bit different. To me, I haven't found a Final Fantasy game that's had a bad soundtrack or a bad ambient music to it. This one, again, plays right into it. Overall, I give the game a 5. I'm pretty sure with certainty, and there is a little bit of a sticker now that I mention that, see, but this is a must-own for a PSP. I've been told as such by some people. I believe it is as too. To me, it knocks off a lot of categories. It gets me started on my PSP collection, which is something I recently wanted to do. It also continues my Final Fantasy collection, which I don't know if I'm going to try and be a Final Fantasy completionist, but I want to try and get at least one representation of every game. Again, overall, a 5. A very excellent game to me. And last but not least is the system, and this is another first. The PSP, or PlayStation Portable. This is the 3001 series. As you can see, it has the Final Fantasy game loaded up on there. I accidentally turned the power on when I pulled it up. But from what I understand, it's the definitive portable gaming system if you're not a Game Boy player. And I didn't really get into this. Like I mentioned before, I had a job at the time, so I didn't have time for a portable system. I didn't see the value. I had PlayStation 2, I had Xbox. But I found out through watching a lot of reviews, specifically Metal Jesus Rocks, that there are some amazing games that are just made for this system, or just some great ports that came out. Like this is a great port of the Final Fantasy, and I just wanted to pull it up so I could get it through the cinematic, so at least the screen that you guys are seeing is more than just static. And to me, there's a lot of things I immediately enjoyed about it. I like the size, I like the feel of it, it feels natural. It's meant to be basically a PlayStation 2 equivalent in a handheld system. And there's a lot of games that I understand it fills that quotability with. This one is a PlayStation 1 game. To me, from what I've seen in reviews that I've seen and gameplays that I've seen, I call it a PlayStation 1.75. It's very close to PlayStation 2 quality in a portable system, probably as close as you're ever going to get, and that's one of the big draws of this. Whereas Nintendo systems, the graphics seem to be one generation behind, except for the Switch, which obviously is the current generation on handhelds. You had basically a current generation system that you can put in your pocket, or, it's probably a little bit bigger than most people's pockets, that you can carry around with you and you can have fun with. Again, I got it there because there's a lot of games that I understand are really good on this system that are really worth purchasing it. I understand it's a very good game for racing systems, which is another reason why I wanted to pick it up. Because as you can see, when you hold it, kind of feels like you're holding a steering wheel. So that would make sense that it would be good for that. Another reason I picked it up, again, it was on sale. It's not something I ever owned. It's going to be something that if I go on a long trip with somebody that I can pull out and I can play. Ever since owning the Switch, the portability aspect of some games has, been something that I now value, where I didn't before. And to me, this is just going to be a treasure trove that it's open. With that being said, I rather enjoy it. I can't wait to dive in, along with my others. Doom 64, which I'm going to go back and play. Burger Time. I'm going to play that over and over again. And Final Fantasy Tactics, which is playing right now on the system. So, this is my first of 4 videos with my hauls from Flash Games, Comics, and Collectibles from their 2nd anniversary sale. I'm going to put a link to them in their comments. Amazing people. I love the guys over there. They're really cool, really knowledgeable, really fair. I mentioned this to the owner, John, the other day when I was talking to him. One of the things I love most about the store is I've never had to haggle a price. And the reason being is his prices are either right on market value or they're cheaper. And a lot of times, I found 80 to 90% of the things cheaper than market value. Now, some stuff, the more valuable games, yes, it's right on market value, which can't fault the guy. He's got a business to run. And I'm not going to argue someone selling a game for what everybody else is selling it for. He's made me some awesome deals on games. He knows that I'm a repeat customer, so he's cut me some breaks on some things and gave them to me cheaper than sticker price, which I really appreciate. He treats me very well. He's recommended a couple games to me that I never played before, and both of the games that he's recommended, I've enjoyed. The first being Teen Titans for the GameCube, which I talked about on a previous video. And the second, we're going to talk about in one of our next couple videos, which he recommended over the weekend, that I'd never actually seen in the wild. I'd heard stories about the game, but nothing other than that. I'm just going to shut this off at this point. But I'd never seen it out in the wild, and I always kind of wanted to try it. So he recommended it to me. I'm going to leave that a surprise for a future game. But either way, just a fantastic haul from a fantastic store. I had a lot of fun. Even just visiting them guys is really fun, even if I go in there and don't pick up anything. Because the knowledge that he has, that John has, and also Dario, one of the workers there, who's also really cool. The knowledge that both of them have, we talked about this. If I don't know something about a game, they know about it. And if we both don't know about it, then wow, that game is, there must be something really rare about it. But anyway, I'm gushing a bit. I'm going to put a link to their store down here, their Facebook. I know that he ships games, so if you want to check him out, tell him George sent you. But basically, that's all I have to say on this one. Stay tuned for the next 3. My name is George Coles, and this has been another episode of Retro Game Treasure Hunting.